Myles Garrett. On Friday, we presented during PFT Live, the Run PFT segment with Michael Hawley, the question of whether or not the Browns, if they choose to relent to the Myles Garrett trade demand, should say to his new team, if you want Garrett, you have to take Deshaun Watson. Now, I know there's a fine line between outside the box and just effing nutty, but that's the kind of thinking that teams need to have. You need to be creative. Whether or not it works is one thing. Whether or not you're thinking of creative solutions to your problems is another. Remember, it was the Browns who were part of the deal that saw them take on Brock Osweiler's albatross contract in 2017 and get a second-round pick from the Texans. I remember when that deal was reported. I remember when it first landed. It's like, why would the Browns give up a second-round pick for Brock Osweiler? Oh, wait, they're getting a second-round pick for Brock Osweiler? What the hell is this? Well, it's a way of thinking that has become more prevalent in the NFL. Sometimes, to offload an unfortunate contract, you have to do something unconventional. And if the Browns are willing to admit they made a mistake with Deshaun Watson, which I think is the biggest impediment to all of this, the owner of the team, Jimmy Haslam, doesn't seem to be willing to acknowledge that they screwed up when they traded for and signed Deshaun Watson in 2022. He's got 2 years left on the deal, $46 million a year, fully guaranteed every penny from signing, $92 million left. First, they have to be willing to acknowledge they made a mistake. Then they have to be willing to let the world realize they're acknowledging their mistake. I'm not sure they're there. I'm not sure they'll ever be there. They might just keep their heads down, their mouths shut, and the money flowing to Deshaun Watson until he gets every penny of the $230 million contract because they never want to admit they were wrong. That's possible. But if they are willing to admit they were wrong, this is a way to solve two problems. You've got Myles Garrett with 2 years left on his contract in Cleveland. You've got Deshaun Watson with 2 years left on his contract in Cleveland. Garrett wants to be traded to a contender, and I know the Browns don't want to do it. Well, you're never going to get your best possible trade compensation if you say, okay, I guess we're going to trade him. You got to be coy. You got to play it out. But if there's a way to foist Watson onto the Garrett deal, it makes sense. And I know that the armchair salary cap experts on social media just want to dismiss the entire possibility because the cap charges would be crippling. We posted an item on Friday explaining that there are ways to do it. There are ways to get around it. As simple as trading Garrett sooner than later and delaying the Deshaun Watson portion of the trade until after June 1, when the cap charge for the Browns would be split into 2 years. So it's not impossible, might be implausible, but it's the only way out. Well, it's one of the only ways out if the Browns really want to get out from the last 2 years of the deal. And if another team wants Myles Garrett badly enough, they'll pay the $92 million, the Deshaun Watson tax, to get Myles Garrett. And also to make this work, number one, the Browns are going to have to take less by way of draft picks because they're getting rid of this $92 million contract, the remaining portion of the $230 million deal. And also Garrett might have to be willing to expect less when it's time to get his new contract. Hey, you want to go to a contender? You go to a contender. You don't also say, I want a top of the market deal, $35 million a year, $40 million a year, whatever it may be. I just want to go to a contender. I'll take less money than what I might otherwise want if that's the only way I get my wish and I get to go to a contender. So I don't rule out anything at this point. Teams can be creative, but they also can be stubborn. And step number one for this Watson-Garrett possibility is the Browns acknowledging to themselves and then to everybody else that the Deshaun Watson contract and trade was a disaster. As I've said many times, at a minimum, it's the worst trade and sign deal of the salary cap era that goes back to 1993-94. It's arguably the single worst transaction in the entire history of the NFL when you consider everything that was invested in Watson. Because the money makes us forget they gave up 3 first-round picks and more to get Deshaun Watson. Those players would have come in at, if you scout them well, a high level of skill, contributing to the team for multiple years at a low rate of pay compared to veterans, and definitely compared to a veteran quarterback who has done nothing to earn the $230 million that he'll make when the contract ends. And what would the new team do with Deshaun Watson? You don't make him your quarterback. You cut him. You just cut him. Or you keep him on the roster for 2025 while he recovers from the re-torn Achilles tendon, and you see what he has in 2026. Maybe the fresh start helps him. The naysayers also said, oh, he's got a no-trade clause. Well, yeah, he's got a no-trade clause, but why would he say no to a trade at this point? Surely he'd like to get out of Cleveland. Surely he'd like to get a fresh start. He's human. He knows what's been going on. Maybe a fresh start is exactly what he needs. Instead of waiting 2 more years for it and becoming a free agent, he could go to a team and see how it feels there. Maybe he competes in 2026, or maybe they just cut him. Maybe they cut him on the way in the door. Just take on the $92 million, get Myles Garrett, and move on. We'll see how it goes. Pointed out last night, the Commanders are the betting favorites at DraftKings to land Myles Garrett at 3-1. The Commanders have the cap space and the cash to pull this off if Deshaun Watson is part of the deal. I have no idea whether or not it's even going to be contemplated. It's just the kind of solution to 2 problems for the Browns. And the Browns have shown us over the years, frankly, even with the chief strategy officer and the things they've done to get to the playoffs, they had a good run in 23. It feels like they're perpetually laying the foundation for something. They still have shown when it's time to make the big decisions, they haven't done a very good job of it. They had Baker Mayfield under contract for another year. They started flirting with Deshaun Watson. It pissed off Mayfield. They had to trade him. They had to go all in for Watson. You don't want to make mistakes like that, especially at your most important position on the entire team. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.